What began as a routine morning at the airport quickly transformed into something extraordinary. Travelers came to a halt as 14 police dogs unexpectedly broke ranks and surrounded a small blonde girl standing alone near Gate 12. Nobody dared to make a move. Suddenly, the dogs erupted into frantic barking directed at the young girl. She stumbled backward, anxiety written across her face. "Please, make them stop," she pleaded, scanning the area in desperation. The commanding officer barked orders, but the dogs remained unyielding, their eyes fixed on her as if suspecting she concealed a serious threat. A nearby officer, a tall, stern-faced man, stepped forward. "Sweetheart, we have some questions for you," he said firmly. The girl's complexion drained of color. "I don't understand." "I haven't done anything wrong," she stammered, anxiety rising in her voice. Then the dogs intensified their barking, more aggressively than before. Within moments, security personnel swarmed the terminal. Confusion reigned. Was she in danger? Could she be carrying something illicit? Or were the dogs shielding her from an invisible menace? What unfolded next left everyone speechless and turned this little girl into the heart of a story the entire world would come to remember. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'm genuinely curious. Where are you watching from? Leave your country name in the comments below. I love seeing how far our stories reach. Golden sunlight streamed through the airport's expansive glass walls, bathing the terminal in a warm morning glow. The steady murmur of rolling luggage wheels, faint boarding announcements, and gentle conversations combined to create a scene of everyday normalcy. Just another hectic day at the airport. Flight attendants welcomed travelers with courteous smiles. Families rushed toward the check-in desks, while other passengers queued up for coffee, unaware that within the coming hour, this serene terminal would become the center of an event the world would remember for years to come. Officer Mark Jensen adjusted his badge as he led his elite canine unit through Gate 12. 14 German Shepherds moved in flawless formation alongside their handlers. Disciplined, focused, and silent, this team was performing a routine security sweep ahead of a high-profile arrival. Mark took great pride in his squad's precision. These dogs were far from ordinary. They represented the nation's finest detection. Canines. Each canine had its particular expertise: explosives, narcotics, electronics, and crowd threat detection. Together they formed an unyielding force of instinct and loyalty. As Mark marched on, Rex, his lead dog, edged slightly forward, scanning faces and luggage with keen eyes. Passengers often paused to admire the dogs, capturing photos, some even waving. Mark didn't mind. He understood how much people trusted these dogs, viewing them as beacons of security in an unpredictable world. Meanwhile, his radio buzzed to life. Unit 7 maintaining sweep at Gate 12. Keep formation tight. VIP arrival in 30 minutes. Mark responded calmly, his voice steady. Although he'd carried out this procedure countless times, something about Rex's posture caught his attention, prompting a quick glance downward. The shepherd's ears twitched, and his eyes fixated briefly near the waiting zone. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Merely a handful of travelers, a janitor going about his work, and a small family gathered by the window. Brushing the moment aside, Mark resumed his patrol, unaware that his dog had already picked up on something unusual. Rex's instincts were always incredibly sharp, but today they felt unusually restless, as if an unseen storm was quietly brewing beneath the airport's steady routine. Mark gave a short whistle. Instantly the dog stood at attention, obedient yet alert. Passengers watched silently, impressed by the duo's presence as they moved through the terminal. Neither Mark nor anyone else could have predicted that before the day was over, these very dogs would break all commands to encircle a little girl, to protect her life. The morning rush unfolded as usual. Flight announcements echoed over the speakers, travelers sipped their coffee, and children pulled on their parents' hands. Yet near Gate 12, something small and silent caught the eye amid the bustling crowd. A little girl, no older than 4, stood alone next to a luggage cart. She wasn't crying or calling out. Instead, she simply stared ahead, gripping a well-worn stuffed bear so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Officer Mark Jensen spotted her almost by chance. His K9 unit had just completed a sweep of the boarding area when he noticed the child standing motionless, her pink jacket softly illuminated by sunlight filtering through the glass walls. There was something eerie about her stillness. too composed for a child who appeared plainly lost. Mark exchanged a glance with one of his officers. "Did anyone see her come in?" he asked in a low voice. The man shook his head. There were no parents nearby, no guardian in sight, nothing at all. Rex, Mark's lead German shepherd, abruptly slowed, his ears flicking forward. He turned his gaze toward the girl, his stance shifting from alert to cautiously curious. One after another, the other dogs followed his lead, lifting their noses slightly to sniff the air, as if some unseen presence had stirred their instincts. Mark frowned. "Easy, Rex," he murmured, tightening his hold on the leash. But Rex wasn't tense. He was deeply focused. His eyes remained locked on the girl. Passengers began to take notice as well. Some pointed, others whispered quietly, and a few even pulled out their phones, believing they were witnessing a touching scene. A lost child reunited with caring officers. However, the atmosphere felt heavier, more unsettling. Mark edged closer to the girl, lowering his tone. "Hey there." "Sweetheart, are you lost?" The girl said nothing. Clutching her stuffed bear tightly, she looked up with wide blue eyes, eyes that appeared distant, almost dazed. "Do you know where your mommy or daddy is?" He tried again. Still no response came, only a faint clicking of her bear's button eye as her tiny fingers trembled against it. Suddenly, behind Mark, the dog shifted uneasily, growing restless. Rex let out a soft, low growl of warning. Mark turned slightly, his brow knitting together. Something didn't feel right. He sensed it deeply, and judging by the reaction of the 14 trained K9s around him, he wasn't the only one sensing trouble. In that quiet, sun-dappled corner of the airport, a fragile calm began to fracture. A storm was looming. The brief silence shattered almost instantly. Suddenly, everything shifted. Rex emitted a low, guttural growl that quickly escalated into a sharp bark, resonating throughout the glass-walled terminal. Within moments, all 14 police dogs pivoted simultaneously, their eyes fixed intently on the young girl. This synchronized movement sparked waves of anxiety among the onlookers. Conversations halted abruptly mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused inches from lips. Every gaze in the terminal was drawn to the astonishing scene. 14 expertly trained German shepherds methodically encircling a small child. "Hold your positions," Mark commanded, his voice slicing through the mounting tension. Yet, the order went unheeded. The dogs didn't launch an attack. Instead, they formed a defensive ring. Their bodies were taut, but not hostile. Their heads dipped, tails aligned straight, creating a shield around the girl. It was as if they sensed an invisible menace nearby, something only they could detect. Passengers inhaled sharply, retreating cautiously. Some clutched their children protectively, while others lifted their phones, capturing the bewildering event. Security personnel hurried forward, hands instinctively reaching for their holstered weapons. However, Mark raised his hand, signaling them to stay back. He knew these dogs. He trusted them implicitly. Their behavior had to have a purpose. "Easy, team. Easy," he whispered, edging carefully toward Rex. The lead shepherd's gaze flicked between the girl and an unseen presence. His nostrils flared, picking up a scent invisible to others. Every muscle in the dog's body hummed with controlled tension, poised for whatever was coming next. The other dogs echoed his every move flawlessly, their growls blending together into a chilling chorus of warning. The young girl didn't shed a tear. She didn't even flinch. Standing quietly inside the circle, she clutched her teddy bear, her gaze shifting from one dog to the next. Sunlight poured across the floor, glinting off their fur. It was a striking scene. Innocence and power, locked in a tense standoff. "What's happening?" one of the officers murmured. "I'm not sure," Mark responded, his eyes sweeping the area. "But don't break formation. Let them do their job," the crowd murmured anxiously. A voice questioned, "Is she dangerous?" Another wondered, "Are they protecting her?" Then Rex barked again, short, sharp, commanding. The dogs adjusted their stance, tightening the circle around the girl. The truth was becoming clear. They weren't holding her back. They were guarding her. Mark's pulse quickened. He could read Rex like an open book. This wasn't aggression. It was fear intertwined with responsibility. Rex wasn't reacting to the girl. He was reacting on her behalf. Something near her, or within her possession, had triggered their instincts. Mark crouched slightly, hand hovering near his holster, his eyes scanning the perimeter. Nothing appeared amiss. Just frightened passengers, security personnel, and the persistent echo of barking that refused to cease. Then, abruptly, Rex's ears perked up. His head whipped toward the little girl's stuffed bear, and a deep growl rumbled steadily from his chest. Mark's heart leapt. Whatever had captured the dog's attention was concealed inside that toy. In that very moment, the calm morning shattered into chaos. The tension broke abruptly, like a frayed wire snapping. As Rex lunged toward the little girl's stuffed bear, chaos erupted around them. Passengers screamed and scattered in all directions. Suitcases tumbled to the ground, coffee spilled across the tile, and airport security scrambled to regain control amid the mounting panic. Fierce, commanding barks filled the air, a sharp, rhythmic chorus bouncing off the glass walls. "Everyone, stay back," Mark shouted, raising both hands as he struggled to make his voice heard over the din, but no one heeded his warning. Fear had already gripped the crowd. Some assumed the dogs were attacking, while others feared a bomb threat. A wave of frantic shouting swept through the terminal just as alarms blared overhead. Amid the turmoil, the little girl stood frozen. Her wide blue eyes darted nervously, confused and frightened, yet she remained motionless. Rex positioned himself protectively between her and the crowd, his body acting as a living shield. The other 13 dogs mirrored his stance perfectly, forming a tight circle of defense. Now their heads turned outward, away from the girl, as if anticipating danger from another direction. Mark's instincts screamed that this was no coincidence. His dogs had never lost control before. Every movement, every growl, every subtle ear twitch held meaning. "Rex," he called out with steady resolve, locking eyes with his partner. "What is it? What do you smell?" Unblinking, Rex inched closer to the girl again, his nose twitching near the stuffed bear. Then he released a deep warning bark that echoed sharply across the glossy floor. "Get the bomb squad ready," Mark commanded sharply into his radio. "Lock down Gate 12 immediately." Security personnel surged forward, quickly sealing off the area. Passengers were hurriedly guided toward emergency exits, their anxious murmurs swelling like an approaching storm. What had been a tranquil terminal moments before now erupted into chaos and terror. Amidst the flashing emergency lights and the clamoring of urgent commands, Mark knelt beside the young girl, his voice gentle despite his racing heart. "Hey, sweetheart. It's okay. You're safe. You're doing just fine." The child's eyes fluttered open, her tiny voice quivering. "They're not angry. They're scared." Her innocent words struck Mark more deeply than he'd anticipated. He glanced toward Rex, who stood motionless, tail rigid, eyes fixed intently on the stuffed bear. A knot tightened in Mark's stomach. Whatever his canine partner sensed, it wasn't merely danger. It was something imminent. Hidden somewhere beneath the soft fur and fragile stitching of that silent toy lay the reason the entire airport was about to hold its breath. The atmosphere around Gate 12 felt electric, thick with uncertainty and dread. Red warning lights flashed overhead as staff struggled to reassure frightened passengers. But throughout the turmoil, Rex remained still. His nose hovered just inches from the girl's stuffed bear, nostrils flaring sharply as though trying to detect an unseen presence. Mark lowered himself beside the dog, sensing the taut strength coiled in Rex's muscles. "Rex," he murmured. "What do you smell, boy?" The German shepherd's ears twitched. He stepped cautiously forward, sniffing the bear, then the girl's jacket, and finally the air encircling her. The other dogs followed behind, their coordinated movements producing a ripple of uneasy growls. It wasn't aggression, it was vigilance. They sensed something out of place. Officer Diaz, one of the handlers, crouched beside the closest dog. "Mark, it's not explosive residue," she said quietly. "The sensors would have detected that. Could it be chemical?" Mark shook his head. "No, this feels different. Look at their behavior. They're uncertain whether to defend or to attack." The girl tightened her grip on her teddy bear, her lips trembling. "He's afraid," she whispered softly. Mark blinked in surprise. "Who's scared, sweetheart?" She pointed toward Rex, the dog. The simplicity of her words sent a shiver down his spine. Rex wasn't frightened. He was alerting them. His instincts screamed danger, though not in the way they had anticipated. Suddenly, one dog barked sharply, pivoting toward the row of seats by the glass wall. The others followed suit, noses twitching in the same direction. Mark's gaze quickly shifted that way. An abandoned stroller, a half-finished coffee cup, a child's shoe. Nothing seemed hazardous. Or was it? He issued the command, "Search." Instantly, the dogs split up. Two rushed toward the stroller, while the others circled the seats. Moments later, Rex growled again, deep and guttural, signaling something specific. The scent wasn't emanating from the seats. It clung to the girl's clothing. Mark felt his heartbeat quicken. "It's on her," he murmured. Diaz's face grew serious. "Contaminant powder." "Divis Rosu?" Mark added. "Possibly," he said, eyes sweeping the crowd. "But why would she possess it?" Mark glanced back at the child, frightened, trembling, and utterly lost, and felt a knot tighten in his stomach. A dog's instincts had never failed him before. Whatever scent Rex had picked up was near. Too near. The growl deepening in Rex's throat made Mark realize something horrifying. The threat wasn't closing in on them. It was already here, right beside them. Inside Gate 12, the air was stifling. Authorities had cleared the crowd, leaving only officers, handlers, and the sound of barking dogs lingering in the space. Pulsing red emergency lights cast vivid reflections on the polished floor as Mark crouched beside the little girl. Rex stood alert by his side, eyes locked on the stuffed bear the child gripped tightly, her fingers trembling. "Sweetheart," Mark said gently, "I need you to give me your toy." The girl hesitated, hugging the bear closer as if terrified to release it. Her lips quivered. "It's my friend," she whispered. "Daddy gave it to me." Those words struck Mark like a blow to the chest. His tone softened further. "I promise, I'll return it to you right away. But Rex thinks there might be something wrong with this toy, and I have to make sure you're safe." After a long moment, the child slowly extended the bear toward him. Mark took it carefully, his gloved hands brushing over its worn fur. The bear felt unusually heavy and cold. Not the chill of the air conditioning, but a metallic cold, concealed beneath the surface. "Diaz, get the portable scanner," Mark instructed quietly. The other officer responded immediately, retrieving the compact handheld device from the kit. He scanned the bear's body with the device. Instantly, the screen flashed brightly, and a sharp, high-pitched beep pierced the quiet air. Everyone went rigid. "What does it say?" Mark asked, his voice tight with anxiety. Diaz studied the reading, disbelief spreading over his expression. "There's a metal signature inside the torso." Rex growled low in warning, stepping back with his fur bristling. The other dogs barked sharply in unison, encircling the girl once again. Mark directed his gaze toward the child. "Do you know what's inside, sweetheart?" The girl shook her head, tears beginning to well in her eyes. "It's just a bear." Suddenly the scanner beeped again, this time louder. Diaz's hands trembled as he spoke. "Sir, this isn't a simple toy modification. There's wiring inside." The words struck like a thunderclap. Mark's heart raced. "Everyone, step back carefully." Officers quickly moved the handlers away as Mark gently set the bear down on the floor. The bomb squad was already en route, but every second dragged painfully slow. Rex stood alert, his body tense and eyes fixed on the toy as if expecting it to move. Diaz's radio crackled. "EOD is on the way. ETA 4 minutes." Mark nodded, although his eyes remained locked on the small girl. Suddenly, her quiet voice pierced the heavy silence. "I told him not to put it in there." Mark froze. "Told who?" The girl sniffled. "The man at the airport. He said Daddy wanted it fixed." A cold shiver ran down Mark's spine. Whoever had tampered with the bear wasn't merely hiding something. They were using this child as perfect cover. Now, the crucial question wasn't what was concealed inside the toy, but who had given it to her, and why. As the bomb squad began sealing off the terminal, a piercing scream shattered the chaos. It was Lily. The cry was raw and desperate, cutting sharply through the blaring alarms and barking dogs. Heads snapped around as the disheveled woman dashed past security guards, tears streaking her face. "That's my daughter. Please, let me through," she pleaded. Officers immediately blocked her path. "Ma'am, stop. This area is off limits," one commanded sternly. But panic fueled her struggle to push by. "She's only 4. Someone took her from the restroom 10 minutes ago." Her voice cracked, trembling with fear. Startled, Mark spun toward her. "Your daughter?" he asked, signaling the officers to hold their ground as he stepped forward. "My name's Emily Parker," she sobbed. "Please, I just want my baby back." Rex edged closer to Mark, his eyes fixed intently on the woman. The German shepherd's tail stiffened, his body coiling with tension. For a moment, he emitted a low, instinctual growl, a sound that caused Emily to freeze in place. But just as quickly, Rex relaxed, taking one deliberate step toward her. Mark exhaled, relieved. Rex had made his decision. The woman posed no threat and was telling the truth. Mark nodded to the security team. "Let her through." Emily dropped to her knees beside the trembling child, enfolding her in tight arms. "Lily, sweetheart. Oh my God, are you okay?" For the first time, the little girl cried, clutching her mother's shirt as if afraid of disappearing again. The room fell silent at the heartbreaking scene. Even the dogs eased their stance, lowering their tails though their eyes remained alert. Mark knelt down beside them. "Ma'am, we discovered something inside your daughter's toy. Have you any idea about this bear?" Emily's complexion drained completely. That's her favorite," she added. "Her father gave it to her before—" Her voice faltered, lips trembling. Mark pressed softly. "Before what?" Her tone cracked as the memory hit. "He was an engineer involved in a classified military project. Ever since he disappeared, strange men began shadowing us. I thought I was just imagining things." Mark felt a chill run through him. This wasn't an ordinary security issue. It was linked to something far more significant. As Rex moved closer to the mother and daughter, his ears perked up again. On high alert. Mark noticed immediately. "What is it now, boy?" Rex's gaze snapped sharply toward the window. The threat hadn't passed. It was closing in. The terminal had slipped into an uneasy hush. Outside, red and blue flashing lights flickered across the glass walls, while bomb technicians suited up near the jetway. Inside, Mark crouched by the small evidence table where the stuffed bear rested beneath bright inspection lamps. It appeared to have been meticulously cut open, exposing a web of tiny wires and a metallic core no larger than a coin. "It's not an explosive," the lead technician said, frowning as he scrutinized the device. "But it's transmitting, or at least it was." Mark stiffened, jaw clenched. "Transmitting what?" "Coordinates," came the reply. "Most likely location data. It's a military-grade tracker. Someone has been tracking this little girl." Emily's complexion drained of color as she clutched Lily tightly to her chest, her voice quivering with fear. "They've found us again, haven't they?" she whispered. Mark turned toward her, confusion evident on his face. "Who do you mean by they, ma'am?" he asked gently. Tears gathered in Emily's eyes as she spoke. "My husband, Daniel Parker, worked for a defense contractor. He was creating an advanced encrypted communication chip for the military. About 3 months ago, he discovered a security breach in the system. He tried to report it, but before he could, he vanished. They told me it was an accident. I refused to believe that." Mark exchanged a meaningful look with Diaz. The term breach sent a wave of concern through them. "So, you believe someone is targeting your family?" he inquired. Emily gave a faint nod. "A week after his supposed death, I began noticing unfamiliar cars shadowing us. Strange phone calls came in during the night. Once, when I took Lily to visit my sister, a man at the airport offered to repair her teddy bear, mentioning the stitching was coming undone. I thought he was just being thoughtful." Her voice cracked and she broke into a sob. "I didn't realize he was implanting something inside it." Mark tightened his fists in anger. "They used your daughter as bait, as a lure to track you." The revelation struck everyone like a sudden jolt. The dogs had detected the hidden transmitter long before any technological device. Their instincts had not only protected the little girl, but also everyone present in the terminal. A technician interrupted the heavy silence. "We tracked the signal. It was sending data to a nearby receiver before we managed to disable it. Whoever was controlling it knew her exact location." Suddenly, Rex let out a sharp bark, grabbing everyone's attention. He was staring intently at the glass panel, his body rigid. His hackles bristled as a deep growl echoed ominously through the hall. Mark tracked the direction of his gaze. Outside the perimeter fence, a black van sat idling. The windows were heavily tinted, and the engine continued to hum. Diaz reached for his radio. "Movement near the runway," he reported. Mark felt his heart rate surge. "Get eyes on that vehicle right away," he ordered. Rex bellowed again, this time with more force, and the other dogs joined in. Their combined barking resonated like a blaring warning siren. Mark glanced at Emily, then down at the child trembling in her arms. "Whatever this is," he said grimly, "it's far from over." The bomb squad had only just cleared the terminal when Rex suddenly froze once more. His body tensed, ears sharply perked as he stared toward the massive glass wall overlooking the runway. The shift from alertness to outright alarm was instant. His growl rumbled low and deep, rolling through the hushed terminal like distant thunder. Mark immediately took notice. "Rex," he called carefully. The shepherd didn't respond. Instead, he advanced 2 measured steps, nose twitching, eyes fixed on something beyond the glass. One by one, the other dogs matched Rex's stance, creating a solid line of tense anticipation. 14 pairs of ears pointed uniformly toward the tarmac and the black van waiting past the fence. Diaz followed Mark's gaze, disbelief cutting through his voice. "You've got to be kidding me." "That thing's still out there." Mark grabbed his radio. "Control, this is Jensen. We have an unmarked van at the perimeter. No visible plates. Possible link to the earlier threat. Requesting tactical units immediately." For a moment, static crackled over the line before command responded, "Copy that." "Units dispatched," Rex barked sharply, his claws scraping against the tiled floor as he strained at the leash. This wasn't a random alert. It carried a sense of urgency, the kind of bark Mark had learned to dread. The shepherd wasn't merely signaling. It was tracking something specific. Emily tightened her grip on her daughter. "What's going on?" she whispered. Mark turned to her, his face stern. "We believe whoever planted that device might still be nearby." Outside, the van's headlights flickered on. The engine roared to life, and within moments it sped toward the service exit. Officers yelled as tires screeched across the slick tarmac. "Intercept that vehicle. All available units. Move now," Mark commanded into his radio. Inside the terminal, Rex lunged at the window, barking fiercely. The rest of the K9 unit joined in perfect harmony, their combined barks resonating through the space like a living alarm, far more precise than any machine. Every muscle in their bodies radiated focus and intent. Mark's heart pounded in his chest. He had witnessed Rex respond before, to explosives, narcotics, and fugitives. But this was different. This was instinctual and protective. As if the dogs recognized exactly who was behind the wheel of that van. Through the glass, Mark caught sight of 2 figures inside the vehicle. One turned briefly, the reflection of his face caught under the floodlights, cold, unreadable, watching them intently. Rex's growl deepened, lips curling back, as if he identified the face, a scent traced from the bear now connected to the man. Then the van vanished beyond the gates, tires skidding into the fog. Mark remained frozen, adrenaline surging through his veins. The threat hadn't vanished. It was on the move. His instincts warned him that this ordeal was far from over. He glanced at Rex, who continued to gaze unflinchingly toward the horizon. Whatever those dogs had detected was still out there, lurking. The terminal lights flickered as the command center sprang to life. Officers barked updates into their radios, the urgent buzz permeating every corner of the room. Outside, a black van sped down the runway access road, heading straight for the outer perimeter, sirens blaring in hot pursuit. Mark stood by the window, his reflection merging with the strobing lights beyond. Rex stood beside him, his muscles tensed, tail lowered, eyes fixed intently on the distance, every part of him primed for action. "Unit 3 is in pursuit," Diaz's voice crackled through the radio. "Suspects are heading east, refusing to stop. 2 males, possibly armed." Mark's jaw tightened. "They're the ones who planted the tracker," he muttered quietly. "They were here all along." Behind him, the bomb technician broke the silence. "Sir, You need to see this. Mark turned toward him as the technician gestured at the torn-apart remains of the stuffed bear. Its internal chip was displayed on a small tablet screen. We managed to decode part of the transmission, the technician explained. It wasn't merely a location signal, it was sending data packets every few minutes. The coordinates matched classified military zones. Emily gasped, clutching Lily closer. Oh God, they were exploiting her to siphon data from Daniel's research network. Mark's stomach twisted in dread. So, they weren't merely monitoring you, they were intercepting military communications through her toy. The technician confirmed grimly. This was an active surveillance unit. Whoever these individuals were, they exploited her close proximity to secure systems to piggyback on the signals. Before Mark could reply, Rex suddenly let out a sharp, urgent bark. The noise caused everyone to halt instantly. The shepherd's eyes snapped toward the distant corner of the terminal near the luggage area. Mark followed where Rex was looking and spotted something unusual. A small maintenance bag, unattended, positioned by the glass wall and partially concealed behind a bench. EOD, inspect that bag, he commanded. A technician clad in a bomb suit cautiously approached, the scanner's hum growing louder. The sensor reading surged immediately. Sir, this one's active. Explosive residue detected. Mark felt the air rush from his lungs. The device wasn't inside the bear, but it was nearby. Evacuate the terminal now, he shouted. His team sprang into action, swiftly ushering the remaining civilians out as alarms blared once more. Rex barked aggressively, herding officers away from the danger zone. Outside, through the terminal window, flashing lights converged as a van screeched to a halt. Tactical units encircled the vehicle. 2 men were forcibly removed, one shouting in a foreign language, the other silent but resolute. Inside, the technician carefully disarmed the small explosive device, confirming seconds later, "We're clear." Mark exhaled deeply, his heart racing. Rex stood beside him, chest rising and falling, eyes unwavering. The immediate threat had been averted, yet the reality was much grimmer. These men hadn't simply planned an attack. They were part of something far more sinister. They had already devised a plan for the message. Had Rex not detected it just in time, both the airport and everyone inside would have suffered the consequences. Outside the terminal, turmoil erupted across the tarmac, resembling a scene straight out of an intense thriller. The black van sped along the perimeter road, its tires screeching as squad cars closed in from every direction. Above, helicopter rotors thundered, their searchlights slicing through the early afternoon haze. Inside the lead vehicle, Officer Diaz gripped the radio tightly. Unit 7, target heading eastbound at speeds exceeding 70, requesting authorization for a tactical stop. The response came swiftly. Permission granted. Meanwhile, still inside the terminal, Mark watched anxiously through the window, his knuckles pale as he clutched Rex's leash. The German shepherd paced nervously, barking each time the van swerved, as if the dog could sense the ongoing chase, his instincts fixed on the scent of the suspects. Through the glass, Mark spotted one of the suspects leaning out the van's window, tossing a small metallic device onto the service road. Sparks erupted beneath a police cruiser, forcing it to swerve off course. The van accelerated once more, spike strips deployed and ready. Diaz's voice blared over the radio. 2 police cars swerved ahead, extending barriers across the asphalt. Seconds later, the van collided with the strips. Its tires exploded with a thunderous pop as it spun wildly, fishtailing before crashing into the security fence. Officers quickly surrounded the vehicle, weapons drawn. "Hands where we can see them," someone shouted. The driver attempted to flee, but a K9 unit, one of Mark's dogs named Thor, sprang forward, bringing him down with a precise, controlled bite. Meanwhile, the second suspect trembled with raised hands as armed officers restrained him firmly. "Suspects are in custody," Diaz reported, breathless. "I repeat, suspects apprehended." Mark let out a deep breath of relief. He sensed Rex's body relax at his side, though the shepherd's gaze kept darting back toward the van, alert and watchful. Mark gave his dog a comforting pat. "You did well, buddy. You always do." Within moments, bomb disposal experts and intelligence agents swarmed the crash site. From the mangled van, they recovered laptops, fake passports, and several encrypted drives. A technician called out, "Sir, you'll want to see this." Mark and Diaz gathered around as the evidence case was opened. Inside, there were surveillance photos of Emily, Lily, and Daniel Parker, taken across various countries, airports, and dates. Each image was marked with coordinates and timestamps. "They've been tracking this family for months," Mark muttered. "This isn't just about one airport. It's a worldwide operation." Back inside, Rex pressed his head gently against Mark's knee, his eyes now calm and tail wagging faintly. For a brief moment, the chaos seemed to vanish, leaving only a man and his dog in quiet understanding. Outside, sirens blared in the distance. Inside, the facts became clearer. The danger had been stopped. Yet, the story behind it was only just beginning to unfold. The frantic noise outside gradually faded, replaced by a calm hum of relief. The flashing red lights dimmed, and the wail of sirens diminished as they retreated into the distance. Inside the terminal, an overwhelming tension slowly dissolved into a profound silence. Officers lowered their radios, and the crowd, previously gripped by panic, stood motionless, witnessing a remarkable moment. Emily sat on the floor, her arms tightly enveloping Lily. The little girl's tiny hands grasped her mother's uniform sleeve, seemingly desperate never to let go again. Her face was streaked with tears and marked by exhaustion. Yet for the first time since dawn, she managed a faint, trembling smile. Rex approached with slow, deliberate steps, his demeanor calm. The German shepherd lowered his head, sniffing gently near the girl before tenderly pressing his nose into her palm. Lily blinked in surprise for a brief instant, then emitted a soft giggle, the first pure, innocent sound the airport had heard in hours. She reached up and wrapped her arms around his neck. The entire K9 team appeared to relax in response. One by one, the other dogs settled onto the floor, their tails wagging softly. It was a striking scene. 14 trained police dogs stood silent and vigilant, encircling a mother and child, not as enforcers, but as guardians. Emily looked up at Mark, her eyes glistening with tears. "You and your dogs. You saved us." Mark shook his head gently. "No, ma'am." He did. He nodded toward Rex, who sat proudly yet humbly, his eyes still scanning the area as though continuing to protect the girl. Rex emitted a soft whine before turning back toward Lily, who smiled and whispered, "Good boy." She rested her forehead against his, her small hand pressed gently on his chest. The shepherd remained perfectly still, as if comprehending every word. Around them, airport personnel and travelers began to applaud. Cameras flashed repeatedly, but this time the noise wasn't chaotic. It resonated with genuine admiration. Applause erupted for the dogs, the officers, and for the mother and daughter, reunited against all odds. Mark remained silent, allowing the moment to wash over him. He understood that the world would label this event a miracle, yet he knew the truth. It wasn't luck, it was instinct, commitment, and the unspoken connection between handler and dog that had once more overcome the impossible. As Lily pressed her face into Rex's fur, Emily glanced at Mark through tearful eyes filled with gratitude. "He didn't just save us," she whispered softly. "He returned our lives to us." In that single instant, every officer in the room sensed it too. This was not simply a rescue, it was an act of redemption. By the time the last patrol car departed from the runway, a profound silence settled over the airport. The confusion, the wailing sirens, and loud shouting all melted away into the faint hum of distant engines and gentle murmurs. Mark stood by the window overlooking the tarmac, his reflection outlined by the soft light of dawn filtering through the clouds. Rex sat quietly at his feet, his head resting calmly on his paws. For the first time in hours, Mark allowed himself to inhale deeply and relax. The adrenaline that had propelled him through every moment of danger began to fade, replaced by a quiet, aching awareness. He turned and glanced across the terminal at his team, fatigued but alive, then at the slowly dispersing crowd returning to routine, and finally at the little child safely nestled in her mother's arms. Rex raised his head, his deep brown eyes locking with Mark's. No bark broke the silence, no sudden movement. Just that unmistakable look, a silent understanding shared only between a K9 handler and his dog. Mark gave a faint smile. "You knew before any of us, didn't you?" he whispered quietly. The shepherd's tail gave a single thump against the floor. Then it struck Mark. Every possible disaster avoided. If Rex hadn't detected the device, if the dogs hadn't encircled that girl, If they'd hesitated even briefly, the entire airport might have been destroyed. These dogs operated on more than just training. They acted on instinct, on something far more profound. His gaze drifted back to Emily and Lily. The mother held her daughter tightly, speaking softly as paramedics checked the child's vital signs. The little girl gave Rex a small wave, prompting the shepherd's ears to twitch and his tail to wag gently in response. Mark's throat tightened with emotion. "They don't just save lives," he murmured to Diaz, who had quietly joined him. "Sometimes they restore our faith in humanity." Diaz nodded in agreement. These dogs perceive things beyond what we ever could. Mark rested a hand on Rex's back, sensing the steady pulse beneath his palm. "Yeah," he murmured softly. "And thank God for that." Outside, the sky was growing lighter as the first flight of the morning soared into the air. For most travelers, the day was just beginning. For Mark and his team, it felt like something else entirely. A poignant reminder that heroes don't always wear badges. Sometimes they simply have 4 legs. By the next morning, the airport was bustling once again, though now for a completely different reason. What began as a moment of panic soon transformed into one of the most widely discussed incidents globally. Numerous passengers had recorded the scene on their phones. 14 police dogs had formed a protective circle around the young girl, shielding her as chaos unfolded around them. Within hours, the video clip was broadcast on every major news channel and circulated extensively across social media platforms worldwide. Headlines poured in. 14 canine heroes, dogs detect danger before humans, and the miracle at the airport. Millions replayed the brief footage in disbelief. They watched those 10 seconds unfold, then gasped upon realizing that the dogs had not attacked but rather guarded the child from an unseen threat. At the police station, Mark silently scrolled through the footage, the screen's glow reflecting off his weary eyes. Around him, his colleagues laughed, wiped tears, and shook their heads in amazement. Even the most seasoned officers confessed they had never witnessed anything quite like it. "You do realize," Diaz said with a half-smile, "your entire unit has gone viral. They've been trending for 12 hours straight." Mark smiled softly. "Yeah, but they aren't interested in fame." He looked down at Rex, who was calmly chewing on a toy at his feet, seemingly unaware that the world was hailing him as a hero. His only concern was the girl's safety. Later that afternoon, Emily sent a message. It contained a short video of Lily sitting up in her hospital bed, smiling shyly at the camera. "She keeps asking about her dogs," Emily explained in the clip, "especially the one who seemed to look right into her heart." Mark watched the video twice before forwarding it to the rest of his team. No words were needed. Just the image of the little girl's beaming smile spoke volumes. By nightfall, news crews had set up camp outside the K9 unit with interview requests, documentary offers, and public accolades flooding in. Yet Mark declined every single one. "Let the story tell itself," he stated plainly, confident that the truth required no embellishment. The world had witnessed bravery in its purest form, instinctive, selfless courage. As millions replayed the video repeatedly, one undeniable fact emerged. These dogs hadn't merely averted a catastrophe, they had rekindled humanity's belief in heroes. 2 weeks later, the airport miracle remained the subject of global conversation. The footage featuring Rex and his fellow police dogs had surpassed 100 million views. News anchors hailed them as guardians endowed with instincts that defied scientific explanation. Across the nation, children sketched German shepherds proudly wearing police badges. Strangers sent flowers, letters, and treats to the K9 unit. Yet for Mark Jensen, none of these tributes held a candle to what followed next. That morning, Mark and Rex were invited to the hospital to meet Lily and her mother. The corridors were hushed, punctuated only by the gentle beeping of monitors and a faint antiseptic scent. As they stepped into Lily's room, her face instantly brightened. "Rex!" she squealed, sitting upright in bed with her tiny arms outstretched. Rex wagged his tail enthusiastically, moving forward to rest his head gently on the bed beside her hand. Lily giggled, her fingers threading through his fur. "Mommy, look! He remembers me." Emily smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. "Of course he does, sweetheart," she whispered. "Heroes always remember those they rescue." Mark stood by the doorway, feeling a tightening in his chest. He had witnessed courage in battlefields, disasters, and numerous rescue missions. Yet this moment felt different. This was a subtle form of heroism, one that required no medals or speeches. Emily turned toward him gently. "Officer Jensen," she said quietly. "I never properly thanked you before." Mark shook his head. "You don't have to. Just knowing you both made it is thanks enough." Through her tears, she smiled. "Still, I want you to understand something. The doctor told me that if you hadn't found us when you did, if your dog hadn't reacted so quickly, Lily and I would not have survived that day. You didn't just save our lives, you gave us another chance." Rex looked up as if he understood, his deep brown eyes shining under the hospital lights. Emily handed Mark a small folded note. "Lily wanted to write something for you." Mark opened it carefully. In a child's uneven handwriting, it read, "Tell the dog he's my angel." Mark was momentarily speechless. His throat tightened as he glanced down at Rex, who now sat quietly by the bed, his eyes soft, calm, and proud. Sunlight filtered through the clouds outside the window, casting a warm glow throughout the room. Mark gave a faint smile. "Come on, partner," he whispered. Another mission accomplished. As they left the hospital that day, the world didn't just see a hero in uniform. It saw proof that sometimes the most courageous hearts have four legs.